Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Los Angeles, where the weather and average IQ are 76. Please enjoy your stay.
All right, we are back. This is Creativity is the Cure. I'm your host, Malcolm Moore, and today we have my returning friend, Matt Ritchey. How you doing today, Matt?
I'm good. It's good to feel like a returning friend. Where did I go?
We'll find out a little bit later.
Was I not your friend for a little while? You'll never know, Malcolm.
I think I'd like to decide after the interview.
That's fair enough.
Today, we're going to be talking about your upcoming show, Shpider. And I have a lot of questions about that. But first of all, when you first told me about it, I thought it was like a German thing, like Sprocket, like Shpider. And you know me, I always read things the wrong way. But then I figured out it's a combination of shark and spider, correct?
That is correct.
All right, so can you give everybody an overview? What is this play about?
60 minutes.
He never turns it off.
It never goes off.
Yeah,
it never goes off.
Dad jokes.
Yeah.
And he's not a dad.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like an uncle to like so many people. I like to think of myself as a funkle, which actually sounds like something I need to get removed.
So Shpider.
Yeah. Okay, Shpider. So the story, do you want to know what the... Would you like to know about
let's go back to where did the idea come from first?
Okay, so Shpider had 3 or 4 different steps to it. I've written a handful of plays, and I tried to produce a number of them. A couple of them went up and did well.
Right.
But when I was living at Hollywood and Highland, technically like Highland and Franklin. I was in a bungalow behind the Presbyterian Church. I don't know if you know where that is, right at the corner.
Exactly, because we used to live in Las Palmas, right around the corner.
So there you go. And you know that the gymnasium that is connected to the Presbyterian Church, that is where they shot the Enchantment Under the Sea dance from Back to the Future. So I was living in the bungalows kind of like above all of that, which is really cool. It was a really neat area. And one night, I don't know why, I had this nightmare that a great white shark grew 8 spider legs and 8 eyes and climbed out of the Pacific Ocean and walked into Hollywood, knew where I lived, walked up my steps, and started biting my door down to attack and eat me in my bed.
That's like a whole different spin on evolution.
Seriously.
Not evolution, but evolution.
Evolution,
yeah,
yes.
But keep going, So,
a couple of years later, I was at my first Hollywood Fringe. And
by the way, I know you too well because we teach in the same classroom. Did you hold up your phone and be like, shark with legs crawled up the stairs?
As an idea? No, not at all.
Okay.
I literally just had the dream and went, what's wrong with me? I don't even do drugs. I have to blame this on ancestors. So 2014, I do my first Fringe festival with a show called Romeo and Juliet in Hell. That's going to come back later on in the story. And I saw there was another show playing there that purported to be, it's a B horror film live on stage. And had an amazing poster. And I was like crazy go nuts for this. I'm like, this is going to be my favorite thing ever. I cannot wait. This is going to be so cool. It was not.
Not so much.
It was really, there was nothing. Yeah, it
might not have even been good on paper.
I mean, the poster was unbelievable.
Yeah,
and it disappointed on literally every other level. And so I was kind of so bummed about that I was like, that's such a cool idea. Somebody should do it. Cut to 2016. We have an election. There is a new person who is saying some really horrible things. And I'm like, okay, I guess the person who's going to write this thing is me, because I decided then for some reason to connect the way this person was acting and this horrible misogyny and the way he was treating people was so awful. I'm like, that's an interesting character that I certainly don't want to, because everybody at the time was doing, short plays and fun shows about, using his name and
Right.
having his thing as whatever. And I'm
Shock
just like,
value.
yeah. And it's like, I don't want to have anything to do with this person.
Right.
But there is some definite narrative drama that you can get with some conflict with this kind of person. So I decided, okay, well, maybe he's the head of a network that is creating they're doing terribly, and they have to create their own movie. And so they go through a whole bunch of terrible ideas, and they finally come up with this concept of radioactive spider biting a great white shark that has already been outfitted with lasers because it's going to swim up on North Korea and destroy everyone without anyone knowing.
Of course.
But the problem is they put in this tracking chip into its brain.
It could be tracking shit.
It could be, yeah. And instead of directing this thing to North Korea, it accidentally gets directed to Koreatown in Los Angeles.
Oh, no.
So now it's attacking Los Angeles. And there's a shark walking around Los Angeles, eating people and blowing things up with lasers.
And actually, if you live here, you wouldn't bat an eye.
It's really, it's just...
There's a guy walking the goat. There's a shark walking down the street.
It's another reason for traffic on the 405. So that's I wrote the play in 2016.
That's the origin.
Yeah.
2016.
And I wanted to do it then, but it's this sprawling thing with 10 characters playing multiple 10 characters, 10 people playing multiple characters, and it would require a lot of props and a lot of sets and a lot of that
Some
kind of
special effects.
Yep.
The timing wasn't right.
And I didn't have the money to do it on my own, and it was too much to do in a fringe capacity where you have to walk in with everything and then walk out with everything. There's just too much.
Yeah, we did that when we did our show. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's
like, go, go, go.
Yeah. Finally, we jump. I never thought it was going to be done. And we finally get around to the end of this year, and my friend Sebastian Munoz, who is the executive producer at Force of Nature Productions, we had worked together in 2019 where he produced Romeo and Juliet in Hell,
right,
which is the show that I did first at the Hollywood Fringe, and then I redirected in a different production in 2019. And he said, "Why don't you let's work together again, because we had such fun last time," which we did. And we're going to open in 2 weeks.
Theater is this at?
So this is going to be at the Brick House in North Hollywood on Peach Grove Street. It's right around the corner from Idle Hour. We're recording this in October of 2024. There's a good possibility that this show is long over. Perhaps there's a link where you can watch it. Perhaps you're out of luck.
You're still on the fastest route.
I'm just going to have a sip of water and let you move on to your next question.
Were you ever writing, directing, and also starring in a show? Have you done that before, like all three of them?
The only time I could say that's a possibility was back in second grade. Seriously, that was. We talked about this the last time. Like I was doing an after school class where they had you write your own thing, and then I think I directed everybody, and then I did the lead. I have not done those three things at the same time.
Right. And that's why you're still alive.
Part of the reason I'm still alive, yeah. Part of the reason is I feel like productions need an outside eye.
Yes.
And if I've written something that I am performing, I cannot trust myself to be judgmental enough. Judgmental is the wrong word, but not yet. If it's a movie, maybe I could possibly pull that off because you can go back and you can take a look at the take or you can look at the whatever. But if you're really getting into something and it's a stage play and a production, I suppose I could go insane and film rehearsal and decide what works. But it's too much. So this is for somebody asked me today, for example, if I'm in Shpider as well. Yeah. It would not work at all because it's 10 people that I've got almost constantly moving and doing lines, and it's a stylized thing. Yeah. There are voiceovers and there are commercials, and I definitely do a voiceover or two that you might be able to hear, but I wouldn't be able to handle it.
Well, I know that you've done a lot of acting before. Is it more stressful or less stressful, like not acting and just being there to make sure, that it honors your writing and it's working on stage? Is it nice to just kind of disappear and be in the background? Or is it just different?
I think it's just different. It's funny you should bring this up because I was thinking about this the other day. This will be my, I don't know, let's call it third time that I've really done it quite like this, fourth, fifth, I don't know. Writing something and then directing it and helping to produce. Force of Nature is officially the producer for this thing, but
right.
You always need to make sure that you can source stuff and help out with that aspect of things. Part of the reason that this has been so great this time around is I've done it. Like I know.
Right. You know what you're walking into.
Yeah, and I know how I work.
Right.
And as long as I hire the right people and hire the right actors, for example, because everybody who works at Force of Nature in the production side of things, they're part of that company, they're all just unbelievable. They're doing so great. They're super pros, and they've got everything in hand, and that's terrific. And then it's just a matter of, okay, I know how I see the writing to this show, and I see in my head exactly how I want it done. So I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to get people to audition for this in a way that I'm going to know now if they can handle the stylistic stuff that I'm going to be demanding from them later on. And I've done it enough that I'm finally confident to be able to go, I can pull this off. It's just a matter of time.
I mean, that's kind of like me being a drummer. I've played so many shows. I've had everything go wrong. And when something goes wrong, you go, oh, this is what we do. Right.
Isn't that great that you get to a point where, like, if something stumbles,
right,
you finally, after so many times, get to a point where you're like, I've done this before.
Yeah.
I now know that failure is fine and possibly helpful, and it could be.
You can make it into something magical.
Yeah.
You kind of led up to one of my other questions. For this show, did you choose the cast? Did you do auditions? How did you pick the people?
I had auditions. There are certainly some people that I've worked with in the past where I'm like, I would love to work with them again, or people who I've met who I'd love to work with for the first time.
Right.
So I'll invite people and say, here's when the auditions are.
Right.
And then the company has their members, and they come and audition. They had first choice auditions. I think they had their first day was just company members.
Right.
And then after that, it was other actors could come in. And so it was a mixture of that. And we put out a casting notice for anybody. So anybody who wanted to come and do a non-union play at a small theater in Hollywood, people were breaking down the door, much like a Shpider might in one stream. But we definitely got enough people to do the show.
So a combination of people you knew and then people that surprised you that just showed up. Yeah,
and there were a couple people that I worked with in the last show that I did with Force of Nature, and I was like, this could work out really well because it could blend. Like, I'd definitely be using company members. I'd definitely be using people that I know could handle it because I've worked with them before, and that's what it wound up being, a really nice mix of a few people I knew, a few company members that I didn't know who were great, and some people who just came in. Yeah, it turned into a really nice mix.
What is that great Steve Martin play about Picasso that we've talked about? What's that called again?
It's called Picasso at the Lapin Agile.
I used to live in Rochester, New York, and I saw that there. My question is, would you like to, after this initial run of shows, send it out and let people do it in other cities? Do you do that with your work? Do you ever publish it and get it out there, and so somebody in England could put this on, or...
I would love to do that, number one.
Yeah.
And number two, I don't quite know how to do that. I've tried, it shouldn't be that difficult, but I've tried with one of my other plays that has been produced, I think, 3 times. Right. And I went, okay, it's been produced 3 times. I can now lock the script because it changes every time a little bit.
Right.
But I've tried with a couple of places to get it published and to no avail. There were some things with Romeo and Juliet in Hell that I thought might be problematic in terms of rights issues.
Right.
So I didn't know if that's...
I think, though, Shakespeare, has been gone a long time. And what is it, 75 years? I think you're good.
That's true. Unfortunately, I used one from a chorus line at the end of the play. And I do a little bit of Three Sisters, but that's a Chekhov. So that's not.
Well, let's hope that even though your show starts 2 weeks from when we recorded this, that's going on.
I'm totally cool with that. I hope somebody's listening to this for notes.
If there is someone out there listening and they think this sounds really good, are you going to film it in case anybody asked about it?
Yeah, I always like to have stuff filmed just for posterity, just so I can take a look at it. We're in a situation now where you can get theater filmed, certainly small theater, with 3 cameras, really well done, with decent audio equipment,
right?
So that you can literally sit and watch it at home on TV. It's not going to be the same experience,
right,
but you can really relive that in a way that you couldn't before, when Mom was at the back of the auditorium and you were, the tree, and she was zooming in. It was terrible audio and Super 8, yeah.
So let's go way back for a little bit into your past. We've done a little bit of this on the original episode, but who's your favorite playwright? I know it's probably hard to pick one, but give us one who inspires you, that you think is very creative, and whenever you read their work, you're often surprised. He's looking at his phone.
He's looking at his phone because he read something recently and wants to remember the name. Well, first of all, you bring up, I don't know that there's necessarily a specific playwright, Shakespeare aside.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
He's not bad. He's getting a name for himself. There are a couple of, the one who I started reading recently is Jennifer Haley. She wrote a play called The Nether, which I heard about as part of a symposium of other playwrights. So this play, and I won't say too much about it because honestly, whoever's listening to this should read this thing. Yeah. It is one of the most uncomfortable plays that I've ever read and or seen. If you know anything about The Pillow Man, there's a similar kind of thing. I'm assuming you don't know The Pillow Man because you're laughing.
I'm getting a little uncomfortable, but go on.
Oh my God, it's terrifying. It is terrifying. And this has a similar kind of thing. The Nether, it's a futuristic place where it's the internet, but you go on VR and it's super duper real. And therefore you can do anything you want without any repercussions in the real world. Think of every depraved, horrible thing people might want to do if they wouldn't have to pay the price for it.
Well, it's funny, the interview that I just did with my younger son, Caleb, I gave him a quote from Brian Eno that says, art is the only place where you can crash your plane and walk away. But it sounds like this is a little more disturbing.
Oh, it's unbelievably disturbing. Like, I'm not going to go into it, but you should check it out. Okay. I read it, wildly disturbed, and saw a production of it at Fringe that was very well done and equally disturbing. And then I read another play of hers called, I think, Neighborhood 123 or something to that effect,
right,
where she really does focus on kind of a futuristic version of the world and America, for lack of a better whatever, and the kinds of things that, even though technology may be advanced, we're not. We are animals, and we revel in the basest things in our nature.
Right.
And the future may make it even easier to do that, and it's going to cause a lot of problems.
It's approaching rather quickly.
Yeah.
And is she out here in California?
I don't know, actually.
What's her name one more time?
Jennifer Haley.
All right.
So yeah, that she.
Check her out.
I wouldn't necessarily say I read all of her stuff, but like recently I've been reading some of that, and it's been.
So probably not Disney content.
They will not be turning this into a cartoon at any point in the near future.
All right, so since this is creativity is the cure, and that's the topic we talk about, and how we use creativity in unorthodox ways and different parts of our life, what part of your creative brain helps you get a show like this off the ground? So not writing it, directing it. What is it like to try to deal with all the unexpected things when you write and put a play on, like financially getting the people, getting the music done, when things go wrong? When you and I did a show, I remember somebody walked in the middle of the show. We had to figure out how to deal with that, or if they have backing tracks that are part of your show and they play the wrong one. How is it for you when things are going wrong, and at the end of the day, you have the most pressure because this is your show?
Yeah.
It comes down to your name if something goes wrong.
Thanks, Malcolm. Thank you. 2 weeks.
You got a target on your back.
2 weeks. Had my last real rehearsal yesterday. Thanks, Malcolm. Okay, so let me see if I can. So the question is, like, creatively dealing with the things that are not maybe typically thought of as creative.
Yeah, I mean, you're a great actor, and you perform live often, and you know how to improvise and deal with things that are unexpected on the spot and actually turn it into a great thing, just like a jazz musician. So what happens with the logistics of trying to get a show like this off the ground? Like, you're trying to think of, like, how am I going to come up with enough money? What if people don't show up? How do you deal with that stuff?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with experience, like we were talking about. I mean, when I first started, I would just go to every town hall and look things up. And for my very first big show, I hired a production team who were able to do all of these different things while I was trying to just focus on directing. And
so you were smart enough to delegate even at the beginning.
Yeah, at the beginning, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to do what I wanted to do if I didn't have outside help. Having worked at the Fringe for several years, I now have figured out how to kind of one-man army a show, right? For the background stuff. So it's just preparation, and I actually think that is actually connected to improv in some ways, because if you just say to somebody, if we're doing an improvisation scene and we get up there and you just say, go. Okay, cool. You can probably come up with something on the spot.
Right.
If you say, okay, you are in the woods, one of you is a chipmunk, you need to find a golden Cheerio, go. Well, now you've got parameters, and now you have a focus on what you're supposed to do, and here are the kind of the confines. I know we talk a lot about Trent Reznor and how he gives himself limitations. Right. And he prepares to do this creative work by saying, here are the limitations that I'm going to set, here are the things that I'm going to set up so that I can experiment and be creative within these boundaries. And in a similar way, knowing how the production is going to go, or how to set up a production, and having all of that stuff prepped ahead of time, then leaves you a lot more open to be creative and spontaneous in the moment.
Because despite that, things could go wrong. And now you're making me think, when we did our show, Mr. Malcolm's Music Factory, I can think of two things we didn't expect. Two cast members last minute could not perform some of the shows. And one of them, we couldn't get a replacement, so you played the part.
Yep.
Thankfully, you had written the show, so you had a little bit of an edge. But the one that really caught me off guard is one of the main cast members couldn't be there for a show, and we got our friend Neek Hirschman to, what did she do? Learn all her lines in 24 hours?
Yeah, it was crazy.
I mean,
we
lucked out that we had someone so talented, but that's a good example, right? Yeah. You could be ready to do a show, and then someone's like, oh, I can't make it on the second night. And you have to come up with something. And I think that's why you're saying you have to make sure you're totally planned ahead.
Yeah, because even when you're planned ahead, something's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to plan. And I mean,
let's be honest. Things are going to go wrong.
Things will go wrong all the time. I mean, you talk to any first assistant director in Hollywood, and they'll be like, "You need to plan for Armageddon." And then be thankful if things go fine, because something's going to happen you're not going to think about.
I mean, it wasn't really a well put together movie, but it sure made a lot of money.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, you always need to prep for that.
Here's something for aspiring filmmakers or people that want to make TV show or theater like this. In 2024, how difficult and expensive is it to use a theater in Hollywood these days, to rent a theater, to put on all of this? What are we talking to put on? I mean, how many seats are in this theater that you're doing?
This theater has 40-some, but there's enough space for them to put out extra chairs, so you can get up to, I think, 52 seats if we sell out.
So let's say there's a new playwright that's coming into town, wants to put on a show, organized like you. What can they expect to pay, and how do you rent a theater?
Tens of thousands. So I'm not kidding. That's
You're not kidding.
That's not a joke. No,
wow.
Tens of thousands. So there's this show, and there's putting on a show. So right now I'm working with another director / producer on possibly putting up his production of a brand new play.
Right.
And with Shpider, Force of Nature, their production company, rents a space with another company that is in the space.
Right.
So I think they have like an ongoing thing, and I don't know what their rent is, but it's not necessarily a co-ownership, but I know
Right.
that they kind of go back and forth with doing different shows, and they kind of commingle, right? So that is going to be a completely different situation. It's not a production company that owns the building per se,
Right.
but they don't just randomly say, we want to do a show, let's try to find a theater. So that is incredibly cost effective. The amount of money that you're going to have to deal with up front goes straight down.
Right.
And then you find ways to take the rest of your budget and the rest of your, assets and whatever, and how many of these things do we already have? How many of these things can we get for free? How many of these things can we build out of paper?
What's the cheapest way we can build a shark with laser beams and legs?
Exactly. And the answer is you can't do it cheaply, by the way. Holy cats.
So let's say that somebody came out here that never done a show. It might be better to start somewhere like the Broadwater, where they can take the smaller theater, pay a set fee, find out the time limits, maybe pay for one rehearsal and however many shows.
Yeah, same kind of thing. I mean,
Start really simple.
It's one of the reasons that I'm always so rah about the Hollywood Fringe, because that way there's so much theater going on during that time that even though you will probably only do 6 performances, and it'll be a little bit of a rush to get in and a rush to get out, and it'll be in the middle of all of this the amount of money that you are saving is insane. So this other play that I'm working on right now, I think there's 6 characters, 1 location. Yes, they're going to have to build a set. They want to do a 6-week run, 3 nights a week. They're looking into $34,000 to $40,000.
Good God.
For their
and this
budget.
is nowhere near like a Pantages for people out there. This is like super simple.
No, this would be a medium-sized theater, a rental of just like you're not connected with anybody else. There's not a production company. It's just I'm going to come in with money and I'm going to put up whatever I want to do.
Right. Almost pay to play.
Yeah, it is. 2007, I think, was when I did my first show. I think I spent about $15,000 to $17,000.
Good God!
And that was back then. And again, it was 6-week run, 3 days a week. I had 5 characters, maybe 6.
Yeah.
But then, not only do you have space rental, which gets expensive, but, you got to pay your actors. You have to do PR. You need to get set builders. You need to do all of these different things. Yeah. And you can't price your tickets at $30 because
nobody's going
to go.
Yeah.
So you got to price your tickets back then in the 12 to 18, maybe 15, something like that.
Yeah.
Multiply that by 50 if that's your house, but you're not going to get full houses every night.
Yeah.
So
you're not even going to break even.
Yeah, that's why when you're going to come in and do something this big, it's like I have always wanted. This is the advice that I was giving to this person. As I said, listen, you need to go in thinking, I am going to have the time of my life. This is something that I desperately want to do. I'm really going to enjoy it. I will be losing money, and it's fine with me. It's like taking an artistic vacation.
Yeah.
And I wish that wasn't the way theater was, or independent filmmaking, but...
Yeah, and then I would think this is one of many reasons why you're so...
Broke?
Well... organized, and you plan because you know.
Oh, organized, right.
No, I mean, you know that it's going to cost this much money, and you better not waste money by not being ready.
Uh-huh.
All right, well, we always end our interviews with a few quotes, so I'm going to read you some quotes, and I'd like to hear your reactions. This one is from one of your favorite writers, Lawrence Kasdan, who people don't know.
Oh, Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Big Chill, and yeah, he's great. Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. He once said, being a writer is like having homework every night for the rest of your life.
Oh.
Can you relate?
Yeah. Yeah. Because the other thing about that is because it's going to be looming over you. And you can procrastinate, but at some point there's something tugging at you like I need to get this done because it's going to be due at some point, and if you don't, yeah.
It's never ending.
Never ending.
All right, another great writer, Malcolm Gladwell, once said this: good writing does not succeed or fail on the strength of its ability to persuade. It succeeds or fails on the strength of its ability to engage you, to make you think, to give you a glimpse into someone else's head.
Yep, I would agree. I would even add to, not always, but certainly when you're speaking dramatically, connect emotionally. But yeah, it's a good quote. You just like it because his name's Malcolm. And he's glad. Well...
All right, the last one is from one of my favorite actors, Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
He said, great theater is about challenging how we think and encouraging us to fantasize about a world we aspire to.
It reminds me of, you're a fan of The West Wing.
Of course.
Okay. That show has been called, liberal fantasy, basically. Right. Showing politics the way we'd like it to be if we were dealing with, intelligent, savvy people all the time who could have conversations and arguments, but then come to a, conclusion about,
Yeah, what's the date today? October
27th, 2024.
Yeah, it's a timely comment.
Yeah, so if we are all dead by the time this airs, I would like my mother to know that I love her very much. And that she is not a sarcastic fringe head. I think that there's a real connection to that. Yeah, and I think it's also saying that, not to go into a larger diatribe, but I have this conversation sometimes with people about needing to have something to say, or what are you trying to say with this piece, or what is your point, what is your theme? And often, you don't know what you're trying to say. You have a story that you want to get out. And by the time you're done, maybe you realize, look at that. Now that I've stepped back and taken a look at this thing, I guess I was trying to say this.
What's the bad robot thing? I did that.
Exactly. So, yeah, I think there's that as well. It's the more you can get into your work without worrying about what is the point of this, you will start to find out what you care about and what you're trying to say if you don't censor yourself.
Right.
And then step back later on and find out what's going on in your subconscious.
All right, let's get extremely specific, because this is mainly to help your show.
Appreciate it.
When does Shpider start? Where can they go see it? How can they get tickets, and is there an online link?
There certainly is. They can go to fonprods.com. It's FONPRODS.com. Probably /ticks, but just go there. And there will be a ticket link. And we are going to open the show in November. So it's going to be November 8th, 9th, and 10th. So it's going to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Friday and Saturdays are going to be at 8 p.m. And Sundays are going to be at 2 p.m. So it's 8, 9, 10, and then 15, 16, 17, and then 22, 23, 24. And we're going to end that weekend before the Thanksgiving.
And can they buy tickets ahead of time or just at the show?
Absolutely. Once you go onto that ticket website at fonprods.com, you can get tickets. There is an after show if you are interested as well, called the Sci-Fi Focus Group, which is a series of short plays written by other writers, directed by other people, and acted by other people that I'm actually not personally connected with, but they took some goofy titles that I came up with and put into the show that they decided to take the title and actually turn it into a short piece. And that is an additional show, however, that will be playing afterwards. You can buy tickets for that on that website, too.
You also have made a really fun preview. Is it on Vimeo, YouTube? How can they watch that?
It's on YouTube, and I will send it to you, so perhaps you can even link it.
Yes. That's a great idea. If I stay after the show, can I get Shpider's autograph? I mean, he probably could sign 6 at a time, right?
That's 8. That's a very good possibility. I think we're going to have T-shirts available.
Oh my God, the poster is absolutely awesome. I already want a coffee mug, T-shirt, and maybe a cape.
Oh, a coffee mug is a really good idea.
And in the classroom, I will wear the cape.
Oh, you will definitely wear the cape. I should put an additional plug in here, by the way, is one of the other things whenever I'm doing a new show is I want to get as many of my talented friends to be involved. And I knew what I wanted this poster to look like years ago. And I have a really good, amazingly talented friend named Caitlin Schiller, and she created the poster.
Oh, she did that.
And
so
it's
awesome.
Phenomenal. I'm so over the moon happy. So
yeah. Does she have a website where we can see her
she does.
art?
I'm pretty sure it's CaitlinSchiller.com. Yes, it is. KaitlinSchiller.com. She's amazing.
All right, that's where we can see the artwork of the person who made the Shpider epic poster.
Yeah, she's great.
All right, Matt, Ritchey, thanks very much. I hope you will return someday for part 3.
Ooh, I can't wait to find out what part 3 is about. Perhaps when we are in an underground bunker. Thanks for having me, Malcolm. It's always good hanging out.
All right, man. Good to talk to you.
Cheers. Bye.
911, what is your emergency?
Hey, Matt, I had to call you back because I forgot to ask you this really important question for the interview. Do you have a second to talk to me?
Yeah, are you recording?
Yeah, I think that would be good probably to hit record first. Hang on a second.
Yeah, check it out.
All right, we're good. So,
okay, cool.
There's this great book I've been reading called The Death of the Artist, How Creators Are Struggling to Survive in the Age of Billionaires and Big Tech. It's by William Dershowitz. And you and I have been talking a lot lately about how it's really tough for artists and musicians these days to get by because the economy and the world has changed. So I wanted to go back in history, way back with you, and throw out some concepts and see what your response would be. Is that okay?
Totally cool.
Okay, so it says, art as we generally understood it is a European invention, barely 200 years old, writes Larry Shiner in The Invention of Art. When we speak of artifacts from other times and places, ancient Egypt, pre-Columbian Peru, medieval France, as art in our sense, he continues, we are engaging in a form of intellectual imperialism and or presentism. He goes on to say that artists were considered artisans and served apprenticeships like any other craftsman. They worked at the behest of other people, and they did what they were paid or supported to do. Patronage was not a gift. It was a quid pro quo. Artist, artisan, the words, by no coincidence, are virtually the same and were, before a certain point, synonymous. Art itself derives from the root that means to make or craft, a sense that survives in phrases like the art of war, or words like artful in the sense of crafty. We may think of Bach as a genius, but he thought of himself as an artisan. Shakespeare wasn't an artist. He was a poet, a denotation that is rooted in another word for make. He was also a playwright, a term worth pausing over. A playwright isn't someone who writes plays. He is someone who fashions them, like a wheelwright or a shipwright. So, Matt, listening to what he has to say here, what would your response be to why people make art today has possibly changed in the last few hundred years?
It's now commercial. Brass tacks, I think, like you can just say that art has now become commercialized to the extent that...
Do you mean like a commodity?
Yeah. We live in a time now when... you're talking about Shakespeare, and during that time, going to see theater was an entertainment. So was going to bear baiting. These were entertainments that people would go out to go and do, right?
Yes.
And then as recently as the 70s and 80s, the 90s, you would go out to the movies and see big movie openings, right? Not even as big as 3-hour epics that you'd have in the 50s and 60s even.
Right.
But now, with with everything that's out there, you just need more and more and more and more and more. And that's about commercialization. That is not to say that the work is necessarily across the board worse than it ever has been. I don't mean that at all.
Yeah.
It's just that it has become so dependent upon funding and upon money And there are still individuals and people who can find, and certainly it's incredibly useful and one could argue necessary to still have a mentor for certain things, right?
Right.
But mentors, I think for the most part, in everything, but certainly in art, have been replaced by going to school or learning something online, just figuring it out for yourself. None of those things are necessarily wrong. It's just a very different thing.
Nor are they necessary, because any kid can just go onto YouTube, right?
Sure, absolutely. Now, are you going to get the same things out of a YouTube clip as you would be working with somebody one-on-one on absolutely anything? Of course not.
No.
But again, all of this is also coming from the standpoint of the commercialization of it comes first.
Yeah.
And the kind of what we would think of as the artistic stuff, I think, tends to come secondary, with a handful of kind of maybe big exceptions. And so if we're talking, just in the movie world alone, Spielberg is actually a really, really good example of this, because Spielberg has a foot, I think, firmly in both camps, because that guy is an artist in the truest form of art.
Right.
But he also has his foot in the just plain commercialization. And because this is a guy who I think in the same year put out War of the Worlds and Munich.
Yeah.
And that's taking what the perfect example of what I think art is today.
Yeah.
It's like, here's the popcorn thing that we're all going to see and we're going to consider it artistic and yay, that's fun and great. And then you've got this other thing that's really got something to say, and that's being crafted by somebody who is trying different things and is really thinking in different ways and trying to push the way we view the world, which of course I think is how a lot of real quote unquote artists are trying to think of things. So yeah, I think we're in a completely different situation.
And can I just add that you brought up Spielberg? I mean, that guy's work ethic. We only found out later on that in the same year that he did E.T., he was also doing Poltergeist.
Yeah. And I mean, he did Jurassic Park. And when they were going into post-production on Jurassic Park, he started shooting Schindler's List.
Yeah.
I mean,
slightly different storylines.
Which, and I think that's why he's such a great example, is because the guy understands every aspect of this. Like he gets the business aspect,
yeah.
and of course the pop commercialization, I'm not saying is not artistic.
Yeah.
It's just a different thing. And then, you sometimes get, when you have great artists who really do the thing that they're like, this is my vision, I'm going to do it, everybody leave me alone.
Yeah.
You get something really unique. Now, at the same time, because it has become a business and because it has become a commercialization, there is something too when a auteur has an idea for something and starts making something because it has to be commercial based on the fact that someone is paying for it, then there's going to be those arguments. Someone who's paying for it is not necessarily going to want this one particular thing to look or feel or sound or happen
right
this way in that piece of art. And the argument between those points of view can sometimes brandish something even better than what either of these people have been thinking about in the first place.
Well, you're actually coming up with a great point that this can be hopeful and balanced, because now you're making me think of Sting's album Nothing Like the Sun, ironically, taking a Shakespeare quote there. He made this beautiful, really bizarre, expansive, and ethereal album. But then when he brought it to his manager, Miles Copeland, he's like, well, this is really cool, but you don't have a hit. We've got to sell this. And so apparently Sting went away for about 15 minutes and came back with We'll Be Together, which was a number one hit. And so that brings it back to what you're saying. Maybe there can be a balance of, okay, we got to make money so we can get by here. But we can also, like Steven Spielberg, take some of the effort and make something a little more artistically challenging.
Yeah, and I think there might be something to, I think somebody who is really what we might call an artist or an auteur or whatever, I think the reason that they may make art is they have to express something within themselves, or they're trying to think of larger concepts, or they're trying to talk about things in a way that they have not seen before. And that, when successful, putting something brand new out, or even something brand new for that particular person, in a commercial standpoint, that is not a sure bet, and that's not a good idea.
Right.
Because,
it's a risk.
Yeah, it's a total risk, and that's what good artists do, and that's what good artists should do. I heard this great, I'm sure you know Rick Rubin's book, right?
Yeah.
Rick Rubin, the more I hear about this guy, the more I like him, because the guy can't play anything. He's not a recording engineer or whatever, but he's a brilliant producer.
Yeah.
Because,
all true.
He was talking about System of a Down's Chop Suey.
Yeah.
And people on, I think he was calling out K-Rock or somebody or whatever. They heard this song about, this is never going to happen. Like, we refuse to play this thing. This is ridiculous. What the hell is this?
Put the keys on the table. You wanted to.
6 months later, it's the number one most requested thing. And it's because he was like, I told them not to, we got notes on it, and I told them, no.
Don't compromise.
Don't dumb it down. Don't water it down. Turn it into the weird, bizarre piece of art that you want it to be. Make yourself happy, because if you are happy with it, other people are going to be happy with it. The biggest issue, I think, with the marvelization, if you will, of movies is that there is a strict, very strict formula. Now, you know me, I'm a formula guy in terms of there is structure. Well, let's re-say that. There's structure and formula, and those things are actually, I think, different. You tell stories with structure because general structure is a way that people can feel comfortable and understand what is happening in your story. That's a reason to tell structure. Formula is this beat is always going to follow this beat, and there may be different people, but there's always going to happen. This scene's going to follow this scene, going to follow this scene, and it should be the same in Iron Man as it is in Spider-Man, as it is in Batman, as it is in...
It's almost like a template.
Yes, it's going to feel homogenous, as opposed to someone who is going to make a movie like Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah.
Right? If those guys hadn't had a hit movie beforehand, and it was a minor hit movie, you go out and you make that thing, you take a look at that and go, no, I'm not going to give you money for this. This is insane. This is crazy. It doesn't make any sense. I can't even see it in my head, and it's going to cost a ton of money. But when they made that movie, that bizarre thing that was this outlandish multi-reality thing with people as rocks and all kinds of stuff, all to tell a story about a mother trying to connect with their daughter.
Yeah.
That is more personal and more important and more emotionally affecting to tell this bizarre, outlandish story to get to the real heart of someone emotionally. And the only way that movie is going to happen is from those two artists. Those are the only two who can tell that story.
Right. And because it's a strong story and has all the essentials for a good story, you can dress it up any way you want, as long as it has a central message that can reach a lot of different types of people, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're all coming from the same place. Even David Lynch, for some movies of his that I watch, and I'm like, yeah, I don't get it. I still at least understand what the guy is going for. Yeah. He's just doing it in such a personalized way.
True.
That, his brain works in such a way that certain things he does can alienate people. But as soon as that guy is tasked with doing something exactly the way the studio wants it done, you get Dune.
You beat me to the punch with that one.
His first major movie was The Elephant Man, and the studio had a problem with it, and God bless Mel Brooks for wanting it to be weird and independent and wanting it to be the director's vision, and Mel Brooks writing to the studio and saying, listen, thank you for your opinion. Yeah. You are not in charge of the art. We are. You are here funding this. Thank you very much. And that actually is pretty close to working as an artisan. But that's not how it usually works these days anymore.
Well, and I think we both know that being artists, that over time, as we move into the future, this is going to keep changing and people have to get used to it. Because if we go back even further than I was mentioning, it says here in the same book, For most of history, artists did not engage in social critique, nor would it have occurred to them to do so. Those who railed against injustice, who sought to awaken society's slumbering conscience, were typically religious figures, prophets, visionaries, heretics, reformers. Religion, again, was the framework of meaning. I mean, that was back then. But I personally think that artists like you or musicians and people that are creating things, they're the visionaries. They're the prophets, the seers of the world today, because we live in a different environment. And you might make a play like Shpider, and you're trying to get a message of a well-known figure in the world, but you're dressing it up in your own way, and you're the prophet today. And that doesn't have to be back to what the term meant, but you are the one that's looking into the crystal ball and saying, hey, this is what I see.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, there's also something to commercialization doesn't necessarily make something good, and something being commercial doesn't necessarily make something bad.
Right.
And I kind of play with that theme a little bit in Shpider as well.
Yeah. All right, Matt Ritchey, I'm looking forward to seeing Shpider about a week until it comes out. Is that true?
We open on Friday.
Wow, man. All right, looking forward to it. Matt Ritchey, thank you very much.
Appreciate the call, man.
Talk to you soon.